So as you probably already know, the Chicago Bears and George McCaskey held their end-of-season press conference yesterday. And if you follow this team at all, this may have felt like deja vu from last season. They started by announcing what had already been leaked earlier in the day, that Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace would no longer be the head coach and general manager of the Chicago Bears, and that the search to replace them starts now. Considering the fact that Bears fans were essentially piranhas waiting to be fed this juicy good news, it is pretty impressive just how badly they screwed this whole thing up. I'm going to start with the news that some people in Chicago are excited about that instantly filled me with dread when I heard it. Here's the soundbite.
Our search team will consist of myself, Ted Phillips, Hall of Famer Bill Polian, our Vice President of Player Engagement, Soup Campbell, and our Senior Vice President of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, Tanisha Wade.
Bill Polian is the name I want to focus on here. I understand that a lot of Bears fans will look at his track record and feel he's qualified for this position. As an executive, his team had an overall record of 229 and 138 with a winning percentage of 62%. His teams made the playoffs in 16 of 23 seasons and appeared in the Super Bowl 5 times, winning 1 of those titles. That sounds like an impressive resume, and it is. But here's why this choice is a disaster to me. Firstly, Bill Polian has been out of the league since 2009, which is about as long as it's been since the Bears were close to relevant. The NFL has changed a lot in the last 13 years, and Polian has not exactly shown an ability to change with the times. Which leads me to my next point. I don't believe Bill Polian is the guy I'd be looking at advice for because we have Justin Fields as our quarterback. Want to know what Bill Polian said about Lamar Jackson coming out of college after winning the Heisman Trophy? He said he is short and a little bit slight. Lamar Jackson is 6'3", by the way. He also said he is clearly not the thrower the other guys are. The accuracy isn't there, even though he had a higher completion percentage than Josh Allen. He then went on to say, I think he's a wide receiver. This man may have been great once, and hell, he may still be able to build a great football team. But when you finally have a once-in-a-lifetime generational talent at QB, the last thing this franchise needs is someone who is stuck believing that athletes can't play quarterback, making decisions on who the organization will hire, because those decisions will dictate the type of team that is built around Justin Fields. McCaskey was then pressed further.
Or just to follow up on that, because I think that's a critical question. I think what we're asking is, it's not a hypothetical. If the candidate, you're a fan and you say that you like what you see in Justin Fields, but if somebody who is a football person that you're interviewing, a head coach candidate or a GM, has reservations about his potential, does that potentially disqualify that person from getting a job with you?
Well, I don't want to get into a semantics debate with you, but the first word of your question was if. That to me presents a hypothetical, and we don't know what the candidates have had to say because we haven't interviewed any of them yet. We want to know what their plan is for that position for the Bears.
Is thinking Justin Fields can be a franchise quarterback a prerequisite for either the general manager or the head coach of the Bears?
We want to know what their plan is for the quarterback position for the Bears.
So, he tried dodging the question over semantics at first, but when presented with a question that didn't start with if, he was put in a corner and basically admitted they have no commitment to anything going forward, including Justin Fields. So, when you put together the decision to allow Bill Polian in the decision-making process for the new GM and head coach of the team, paired with the chairman of the team's unwillingness to commit to their young franchise QB, what else are we to take away from this conference other than they are not committed to Justin Fields as the future of the Chicago Bears? Furthermore, they would appear to be actively seeking advice from people who are likely not to fit the personnel that they already have here in Chicago. It screams outdated thinking and inability to see the big picture, and it doesn't do a lot to instill confidence that this decision will be done in a way that is best for the Chicago Bears. So here's my takeaway from this. The real issue here wasn't the head coach or the GM. The real issue here starts and ends at the very top of this organization. I believe people like Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy were essentially left out on their own as meat shields for the true problem with the Chicago Bears, the board of directors. George McCaskey was pressed multiple times in this conference about his accountability for the lack of success in Chicago, and he told the media that his results are reviewed by the board of directors, who informed him that they wanted him to continue his duties as chairman of the Chicago Bears. Let's take a look at the board of directors for the Chicago Bears, shall we? You know, I'm not a detective here, but there sure seems to be a lot of McCaskey last names here. I mean, George said he asked Virginia what she thought of his performance, to which she said she was very, very disappointed. So basically what he's saying is his mother loves him very, very much and believes he's a big boy who will eventually get this right because she believes in him and he is precious. George also said he is not a football mind. Literally. He was also informed the media that the GM would now report to him, to which the media obviously asked, well, how do you evaluate the team if you don't know football? To which he said, this is a results-oriented business. Wins and losses matter. So, to sum it up for you, the man running this team basically admitted that he gets to the end of the season, looks at our win-loss record, and evaluates the team on that. Because again, as he said, he doesn't know anything about football. The prerequisites for the chairman of the Chicago Bears, literally in his own words, is the ability to look at the win column, look at the loss column, tell me which one is bigger, and determine if having more wins is good or if having more losses is good. Which honestly explains why they had no idea what to do with Matt Nagy after 2 straight 8-8 seasons, as George McCaskey didn't know which 8 was higher, so he waited until there was a 17-game season because a season with an odd number of games couldn't result in a 500 record. Okay, so I'm a little heated, but believe it or not, I haven't even gotten to the worst part of this press conference yet. I know, right? So I'm sure you all heard the story earlier in the week about Olin Kreutz. He went on 670 The Score and told a story about how the Chicago Bears offered him $15 an hour to be a consultant and help coach the offensive line, to which he says he declined. George was asked about this.
George, Olin Kreutz told a story the other day about how the Bears offered him essentially somewhat of a consulting role with the offensive line for $15 an hour. Were you aware of that offer when it happened, and what was your reaction whenever you were aware of it?
I've learned over the years to take just about anything that Olin says with a grain of salt. And I look forward to hearing that story again and hope he includes it in his Hall of Fame induction speech.
So you're saying that it's not true?
That's the way it is sometimes with Olin. Don't get the whole story. And Olin knows what the story is.
Yeah, he basically called him a liar in front of that microphone. This was honestly shocking to me. I love the Chicago Bears, and I wasn't old enough to see the 85 Bears, so the best team I've seen in this city was that 06 team, and Olin had a lot to do with their success. To essentially get up and say that he is lying, to disrespect a Hall of Fame alumni like that, one that still clearly loves and follows the team, is just beyond disrespectful to me. All he had to do was get up to that microphone, say that he loves and appreciates everything Olin has done and continues to do for the team, and if that story is true, that he would love to talk to him personally to straighten things out. Instead, he used it as an opportunity to dig at Olin's credibility, only making himself look worse in the process. Oh, and one last thing. McCaskey also said that while it isn't preferred, thank goodness, they wouldn't rule out the possibility that they would hire a head coach before hiring their new general manager. If this happens, I'll likely lose my mind because I don't really see a situation where that makes a whole lot of sense. In my opinion, since the general manager of the Bears is supposed to have complete control over football operations, it doesn't make a lot of sense to not give them the ability to hire the coach that fits the type of team that they want to build. It feels like trying to mix apples and oranges, and I feel like if you let the GM pick his guy, it will be more likely that they work out in the long term because they got into this together. So there you have it, folks. I honestly didn't know a press conference could be worse than the one I witnessed last year, but here we are. Now, with all that being said, there is still hope in Chicago for a few reasons. Firstly, the young core on this team is not that bad, and one could argue this team has more talent than their record shows. Secondly, they have what I believe to be a franchise quarterback in the making in Justin Fields. He showed ability, accuracy, and toughness this season in a situation that I don't think could have been much worse than it was. That Cleveland game clearly changed this team going forward, and I think it took the air right out of the Bears season. Lastly, while I don't believe in the people making the hiring decisions, once that GM and coach are hired, they do have absolute freedom to run this team the way they see fit. Unlike in places like Dallas or Indianapolis, Chicago's front office will stay out of the way of the football operations. I wish there was someone to oversee the operation who wasn't George McCaskey, but ultimately there is a lot of room for a coach and GM to do what they really want here compared to some other places. That means if the Bears do get lucky and hire the right guy, I could see it working here. Yep, that's it. that was my attempt to make myself and you guys feel better about the future of the Chicago Bears after that press conference. Let me know in the comments below if you agree with me and what you think the future of the Chicago Bears looks like. Is it all doom and gloom, or do you think there's a light at the end of this tunnel? Thanks for watching, everyone. Peace.